we're about to have an election. Interest rates just got dropped by the Fed, and it's reporting season for tons of major corporations. And there's these two realities out there. One of the realities are there are businesses that are doing really well. Goldman Sachs just blew estimates by like 49%. Bank of America is killing it. So it's like the financial people are crushing it. And then you have these luxury brands that are challenged, and cars, consumer products companies. And so there's like these two worlds out there right now, really very separate. There's middle America that really have been bit by inflation. I just ordered coffee and it was like $7. I don't need to buy $7 coffee. I'm going to make my own for 40 cents or 20 cents. And so you have this middle of America that is revolting from the price increases and the food costs and the gas costs and just everybody raising prices. You have these insurance, financial instruments, and tech companies that are making more money than ever because their models are so illegal, basically. I mean, Google's actually, they're fighting to break it up, and I think it's right because that company has for years been cheating, lying, and stealing. I'm a capitalist. I want to be clear about that. This is that moment that I actually think regulation is required once a monopoly exists or there's a stranglehold on a particular industry, and you have really Google and Facebook owning, lead flow, paid advertisement out to the world because they have all these eyeballs. Nobody's actually watching them and verifying that they're playing fair to the consumer or to businesses out there. So there's a real weird thing that's happening right now in business. And this moment, we're waiting for the election, and the government, the Fed, just reduced interest rates for the first time in 2 years. And so real estate is weird. Businesses there's this two tails of businesses. Really large tech and financial firms are killing it. All the consumer brands and legacy businesses are struggling because middle America has turned off the switch for spending. The World Economic Forum just put out a warning to all major countries in the world. They said, stop printing money, stop inflating. We have, for the first time at the end of 2030, the government in the US will match the production of the entire company when it comes to our national debt. So let me just break this down because it's complicated and I want to make sure that you understand it. As a father and a leader of my family, if we make $100, we want to have our housing expense be like 25, our living expense be like 15, like that's food and all the other stuff. And 60% of our income should be, to pay taxes, to make investments, to put money away for long term. And so we want to live on, 30, 40% of our income and save and invest and think long term for the other 60. And forever, for like 300 years, that's the economic model that our government has followed, except for now. And what the World Economic Bank just said is like, hey, countries like China, US, if you don't stop printing money and issuing debt, you're going to have, instead of living on 40% of your $100, you're going to have $100 be to service debt. Like 100% of your country's income will actually go to service debt. Well, what does that do to the average human? It's anarchy. The average middle-class person is not going to stand for that government. It's not going to be allowed for our government to issue debt and 100% of that, 100% of the country's income, what the country makes, be used to pay debt down. And so I'm very nervous about those couple things. This tale of two worlds for businesses, interest rates being high, our government's overspending. We're in a very interesting, never been done before time. And if you're a business owner, I think a lot of people are right now in a space where they're pausing. They're pausing spend, they're pausing plans. They're being cautious about what the world looks like. And I don't blame them, because it's a very weird and interesting time. Number one, don't rely on the government. Be very clear about how you're saving and spending money. In this moment, I think the mistake that people make is, oh, it'll be fine, or, oh, it's going to be all right. I'm doing multiple things, and I'm going to share all those things with you so that you can make plans yourself. Number one, I'm assuming the governments aren't going to get their acts together, that politicians like Trump or Kamala are going to continue to spend like drunken sailors, which means it really means two things. Inflation is here to stay, and it's going to be higher levels than in the past. So instead of inflating the government or our dollar at 2 or 3%, you're going to see 3 to 4, maybe even 5% on average. What does that mean for you as a business owner, or as a human, or as a leader of your family, or in your friend group? It means you have to buy assets and get them leveraged, because if you don't, your purchasing power over time is going to go down and down and down. So buy hardcore assets, things like businesses, real estate, gold, hard assets that inflate and go up in value over time. That's the only way to protect the dollar that you earn. Number two, get really clear about your spending. Understand exactly what you're spending, where you're spending it, how, and get into a budget. Businesses this is an interesting thing. I read this, I don't know where I read this, but there's only about 5 or 10% of business owners who think through what next year is going to be like prior to January. So if you think about where you're at right now in your life, in your business, within your family, your physicalness, like how physically fit are you, what your values are, what you're doing in terms of your life's purpose, most people start planning in January for the year to come. And I would just encourage you to get very clear in October and November, and have December 1 be the start of your new year. That actually puts you in the top 5 or 10% of all business owners. Just that one simple act of being intentional. I was talking to a gal in our world who's single, and she asked my wife and I, she's like, hey, why are you married? What is the value you see? And my wife and I were looking at each other. We're like, oh, this is a great question. And we both had different answers, and we both gave her different feedback and advice. But after talking to her for a bit, what I realized is that she didn't have intention. She hadn't described her ideal woman or husband. Sorry, I'm thinking guy. I'm a guy. I'm thinking ideal woman. But she hadn't described her ideal relationship and her ideal human that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with. And so the reason I share this story is that this translates in every aspect of your life, whether you're a business person, an employee, a husband, a wife, a father, a son. It doesn't matter. People who move in intentionality tend to have better outcomes in life. They tend to be the folks that get all the things that they want and report higher levels of happiness, joy, satisfaction, all the things. And so if I'm giving advice about, hey, what's next? It's like, get really intentional about what you want. Get intentional about what your future looks like. Write it down, journal, think, just spend the time and define every aspect of your life. And do it now, not in 2025, not in 2026, but do it, the year before, for multiple years in a row. So that's my best advice. This is a weird time. The world is crazy with politics, with business, with all this stuff going on in technology. And the way to win is just be intentional.